asking the questions mainstream journalists will never ask. This is your Richie Allen Show on richieallen.co.uk, Fab Radio 2 in Manchester, and triggerwarning.tv.
Now, the ex-Wales rugby union captain, Gareth Thomas, very good player. I think he played centre, did he? If you followed rugby, I think he was a centre, very quick player, very talented player. He has said that he is amazed that football fans are still getting away with homophobic chanting at matches. He described it as alarming and said some clubs were not stopping the abuse. He came out as gay, did Gareth, back in December of 2009. He said at the time that living with who he was and not being upfront about it had caused him depression, so he came out. Now, he wants to change the law to put homophobic and transphobic abuse on a par with racial abuse at sporting events. And today he was at the House of Commons and he launched a draft bill with the MP Damien Collins, who's the chairman of the Commons Culture and Sports Committee. What they want to do is to amend the 1991 Football Offences Act, and they want to include homophobic and transphobic chanting. They want to make it a criminal offence to do this sort of thing at a football match. Singing songs, chanting, saying things deemed to be homophobic will be criminalised if he gets his way. Now, Stuart Wayton is a criminologist and author, and he's writing a book called The Criminalisation of Everything, and he spoke with Sky News today, and he's a bit concerned about the way things are going with regards to criminalising speech. Stuart Wayton, criminologist on Sky News today.
I think we're moving into a kind of a political and cultural situation where if we don't like something, we almost immediately say we should have a law against it and we should ban it and we should police it, without realising that there are quite serious authoritarian and intolerant results of that. I think this is particularly worrying when it comes to language and thoughts and ideas. If people have got incorrect thoughts, historically, people like myself and many other people would go out on the street and argue with people and talk to people. You wouldn't think that the best thing to do was to have a new law and to put people in prison for saying things. But this is particularly strange when it comes to football, because football fans don't mean it. That's what I often find very infantile and immature about these discussions. When football fans make chants, they don't mean anything by it. And there was research done by Cashmore and Cleland. They wrote a book on this in 2016, where they had 3,500 people that responded to their research, and they found that 93% of football fans they talked to opposed homophobia.
So if 93% of football fans oppose homophobia, why do we hear the chanting at football matches? Now, this is interesting.
Particularly in football, people take the mickey out of you. People take the mickey out of you if you've got ginger hair. People ripped Wayne Rooney for having sex with a prostitute. Anything that fans can get on you. That's what football is like. It is crude. It is crass. It is rude. People swear and shout. It's not a normal environment, but at the same time, you shouldn't take it that seriously.
So it's crude, it's crass, it's rude. People will take the mickey about everything at football. You shouldn't take it that seriously, said the criminologist. So the presenter asks, why should people have to put up with this sort of thing? Full stop. Stuart Wayton.
We've seen players having bananas thrown at them. We've seen racist chants. We've seen all manner of things shouted at players on the pitch. Should they just put up with it? Is that just part of football?
Well, I think fans should challenge one another. I think people should argue against things. I think if there is racism in football, it means there's racism in society, potentially. And if people want to argue about things, then that's the way you should do it. You shouldn't just ban language and arrest people for saying things. But as I say, particularly at football, where they don't mean it. Right? Most of these chants don't mean anything. It's just a form of offensiveness. And if we're going along this line, we should just arrest football fans en masse all the time, because they are offensive almost by their nature, and that's what's particularly problematic about these laws.
Now, the sound issue there isn't mine, it's a Sky News sound issue. Look, of course I'd agree with Stuart Waiton. You'd expect me to say that. So what about Gareth Thomas himself, the former Welsh rugby star and the first openly gay rugby player? He's behind the move to criminalise alleged homophobic, transphobic chanting. What does he say? He spoke to the same presenter, a woman called Jane Secker. Listen to this.
Well, I've been working in football grounds for over a year now, and I found there is a lot of abuse, and grounds and stewards don't really know how to deal with it because it's very much a grey area. So I think what this does, it puts it into a black and white scenario. It's legal or it's illegal, because at the moment it's throwaway comments and chanting and gesturing for sexual orientation and people's gender identity, and people are being allowed to get away with it. So I think this would go a long way in stopping it.
What about those who would say, look, this is part of going to a football match, this is just the banter? You know, I spoke to an academic an hour or so ago, and he said, you know, that people who are gay in football don't announce it because it's just like having red hair. It's just something that makes them different, and it'll give everybody a chance to laugh at them. That's
absolutely disgusting. The presenter totally misrepresented what the criminologist Stuart Waiton, whom you just heard, actually said. And it isn't incompetence, by the way, that's deliberate. What he actually said was that football fans try to get under people's skins in a crass, crude and offensive way, but that they don't hold those views in any resolute way. And he referenced the abuse suffered by, even if you want to say suffered, top players get, you know, because of their personal lives. Ryan Giggs was unmercifully mocked because of allegations about him and the wife of his brother. Wayne Rooney was hammered because of allegations that he hired very mature prostitutes and stuff like that. And he made a very cogent and well-reasoned argument, and she couldn't even put the salient points to the rugby player behind the agenda to criminalise football chants. This is the essence of the media today. It is rubbish. You could say she wasn't listening to the criminologist. She was listening to him, but she had to mischaracterise what he said, because the media is fully supportive of this lunatic agenda where you try to create a world whereby you cannot say anything lest it offend or wind somebody else up. Now, I know that one or two of our listeners will be tired of this, and they will say, Richie, this is a recurring theme in the programme. It is, but it's so important. Where else is the opposition to this? You know? This is the essence of Gareth Thomas's argument. This is what he says, the rugby player who came out back in 2009.
Do you know what? It's not acceptable. People who think it are acceptable wouldn't walk down the street, and you wouldn't be homophobic to somebody on the street. So what gives you the right to walk into a football stadium and think you can do it within there? The law should protect people.
He can't see the irony, you see. He can't see the irony. Protection from what? He said people wouldn't walk down the street and say hurtful things to gay men or women. Of course they wouldn't, because people don't care. 99% of people, in my opinion anyway, have a live and let live attitude. So what's the problem? So gangs of men go to football, get pissed and sing songs, and you want to protect people from that by locking people up for doing it, which is where it ends up basically. You acknowledge, as he did, that it doesn't really go on in society. But because a few idiots sing songs at football matches, which were perfectly described by the criminologist, by the way. I've been going to football all my life. He perfectly described it. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, that's what goes on at football and cricket at times. I've had unmerciful abuse at cricket because I'm an Irish guy and because I stick out like a sore thumb with my big baldy head on me and my glasses. In fact, before the Rolling Stones gig, Caroline and myself stopped into Old Trafford Cricket Ground to have a drink and to watch the end of a Lancashire-Yorkshire game. And as soon as a few lads there saw me, they started in on me. No problem. I gave it back. no issue, no bother. Do you see where it leads when you want to criminalise people saying things? Anyway, over to Damien Collins. He's the chairman of the Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee. He's supporting Gareth Thomas, and he's in favour of criminalising chanting deemed to be offensive to LGBT people.
There are those who would say, we're becoming this like namby-pamby society where you can't say anything in case you offend anybody. Why does this need to be separately legislated for? Surely common sense prevails. Surely people around are able to take people to task for using this kind of language. Why does it need to be the case that it has to be in some special kind of legislation just for football grounds?
Well, the legislation, especially for football grounds, already exists. It includes racist abuse, correctly so, but doesn't include homophobic abuse, and I think it should. I think we've seen that there is still a problem in football as a sport. Culturally, I think a problem to accept homosexuality. I think that probably underpins the fact that there are no gay players playing in the senior professional leagues, where in other sports athletes have been able to come out. So I think people will question why that's the case. And I think it sends a message as a society to say we take these matters seriously, we put them on the same footing as racism as well, and where there is legislation already in place, it should address both issues equally, and that's what we're seeking to do.
That's what they're seeking to do. Did you hear what he said there? He said there's a problem in football culturally, a problem to accept homosexuality. Have a listen.
I think we've seen that there is still a problem in football as a sport. Culturally, I think a problem to accept homosexuality.
A problem to accept homosexuality. Accept it. This is not about LGBT rights, by the way. It isn't. It's not. Because nearly every man, woman and child in the UK, of course, has got no problem whatsoever with, gay, lesbian men, women, transgender men and women. We have obviously no problem with it. Our neighbours, some of our neighbours are gay. Some of our family members are gay. We have no issue with it. This is not about LGBT. It's about everything else. It's about that and everything else. It's about being told that you have to accept whatever we say that you have to accept. And if you don't accept it, you end up going to prison. So whether it's about philosophies, whether it's your opinion on cultures, whether it's sexual orientation, we're talking about ideas here. Ideas. The state wants to say, we have ideas, we have a set of absolutes, follow them, obey them, or you'll be fined, or you might be jailed. Of course, the criminologist was right, Steve Waiton. It is authoritarian. It's a mad world. Jason Cundy used to play football for West. No, he didn't. He played for Spurs, didn't he? And I think he played for Chelsea as well. He's getting hammered because he didn't like the commentary of Vicky Sparks, who works for the BBC. Now, Vicky made history when she became the first lady to lead live coverage of a World Cup football match on television in the UK. She kept fans up to speed on the Morocco-Portugal game from the Luzhniki Stadium in Moscow. Big deal for her, fair play to her. Vicky Sparks has been around the BBC radio sports scene for a long time. She worked her way up to it. She got a shot to present a big match at the World Cup, and she did it. But Jason Cundy is getting hammered because he didn't like the sound of her voice. He said her voice was too high-pitched, and he said it was a tough listen. So he was invited on GMB, Good Morning Britain, with Piers Morgan, where he was hammered by a load of virtue signallers who tried to put words in his mouth and accuse him of saying things that he didn't say, accusing him of saying that women don't know anything about football, which he didn't say. He was very complimentary about some of the analysts. He just said, I personally don't like the high-pitched voice. Right. Do you want to hear Vicky Sparks? This is Vicky Sparks commenting on a Ronaldo goal in that particular match, Portugal and Morocco.
Silva with another opportunity, short this time. Towards the 6-yard box, and it's in! And wouldn't you just know it? Cristiano Ronaldo gives Portugal the lead. Portugal 1, Morocco 0.
She sounds pretty good to me. But it doesn't matter whether he's right or whether he's wrong, does it? I could listen to Vicky, and I'm not virtue signalling. My favourite commentator in sports today is a woman called Jackie Oatley, who works for ITV these days. Brilliant analyst and terrific commentator. What difference does it make? None. But Cundy is not allowed to say that he prefers the more baritone the more baritone offerings from male commentators. He has to be hammered by virtue signallers. There's no tolerance anymore for people and their opinions. Here's something that I'm going to ask Tony Gosling about. This is funny. Did you know this? You probably did. It was announced over the weekend. The house belonging to Sergei Skripal is going to be purchased by UK taxpayers. And this is according to the Sunday Times. I missed this yesterday because the Times is a subscription site and I will not pay Rupert Murdoch's newspapers. Now, the move has prompted a lot of criticism and jesting online. Why is the government going to buy the Skripal's house? But they're not only buying the Skripal's house, they're also buying the house of Detective Sergeant Nick Bailey, who fell ill after allegedly coming into contact with Novichok. So they're going to spend about 350 grand on Sergei Skripal's house and about 430 grand on Sergeant Nick Bailey's house. What are they going to do with them? Oh, by the way, they're purchasing all their possessions, the cars and all their other possessions. It's going to cost about £1 million. Why? Well, it screams cover up. When have you ever heard of any other crime, even a poisoning or an alleged poisoning, where the government bought the houses involved and bought all the possessions involved? When have you ever heard of that? Something going on with it, isn't there? Eh? Just a wee bit.